Welcome to Capitol Preview, a weekly bipartisan discussion with Iowa legislators about the key issues facing our state. Brought to you by Mediacom.
Good morning, and welcome to another edition of Capitol Preview. Brought to you by Mediacom. Capitol Preview discusses issues important to Iowa with our state representatives. And our state representative this morning is Representative Chris Hagenow, Republican from Windsor Heights. Chris, thanks for coming in here this morning.
Well, thanks for having me. This is fun.
So I guess I'm going to start off by kind of having you give me a little bit of the state of the union as far as the legislature goes. And we've been talking about that a little bit, and I just kind of wanted to get your feeling on it because obviously you are the majority leader this year. This is your first year of majority leader, serving under the Speaker, Linda Upmeyer. So kind of give me a little bit of Chris Hagenow's take.
Well, we've had I think a very productive year. We're on schedule, and we set out, both the Speaker and myself, in the first year in our new roles to try and make the legislature work on time, get some of the big issues resolved as early as possible, and I think we've been successful in doing that, and I think it's the right thing to do. We're in a spot now where we're moving into the kind of the shutdown phase of the legislature where we're putting the finishing touches on the budget, which is the big thing that we work on every year. We've reached joint budget targets with the Senate, which is determining the overall size of the state budget and then how much goes into the individual budget areas. And so now we have to fill in the individual line items, get the bills into drafting, and actually move them through the process. So we've accomplished that, and we're moving through there, and I'm confident that we will be able to wrap things up in fairly short order.
Yeah, it seems like it's gone extremely well this year. It seems like there's been some skirmishes, but they haven't been, real bad partisan splits on legislation. So kudos to you and the Speaker. Well,
and we take pride in being able to reach agreement on those things that we need to find agreement on. Obviously, we're going to have disagreements.
Sure.
That's what we do. But this is the 6th year of the current balance of power, and we've, I think, figured out what are important to each other, what we can work on, and things that we're not going to find agreement on. But the priority needs of Iowans are going to be met, and we've done that, and it'll end up being a good thing for the state of Iowa and the taxpayers.
Chris, there's been talk back and forth. It's been in the newspaper a couple times about the coupling bill. So if you kind of want to explain to our viewers what the coupling bill is all about.
Right. Every year we've had to do this in the past because the federal government, typically very late in the year, passes their updates to the federal tax code. And then we will then come in very shortly thereafter and couple or match Iowa's tax code with what the federal government has passed. It was complicated this year a little bit because the federal government finally made a lot of those extenders as what they referred to permanent. And so that then made our job a little more difficult. We set out to do the same thing that had been done every year, which is to fully couple, or at least in recent history. But that comes with a price tag. But we felt very strongly about that. Iowans, Iowa businesses had made preparations that benefit would be there, and we didn't feel it was appropriate to then change course. So thanks to a lot of Iowa taxpayers out there who saw it our way, we were ultimately successful in that and ended up leaving $95 million of back in the pockets of Iowa taxpayers. And we did that in the current fiscal year, so it ended up not having a negative impact on what our ability was going into the coming fiscal year. So it really ended up being a win-win in a lot of ways for Iowans.
It sounds like it. Where are we at in the budget process? I know the budget is the single biggest issue up there at the State House, and kind of give us a little bit of up-to-date on where we are with budget process.
Our budget subcommittee chairs, which chair each of those budget areas, are working with their counterparts in the Senate to try and find resolution on some of the individual line items. And that can sometimes be difficult. It's not just a Republican or Democrat thing, but you put 150 opinionated people who are leaders in their own community together, and everybody's got a little bit different idea of what that'll look like. So what can we agree on and what can't we? And then once they reach that agreement, which they are in the process of doing in a matter of hours and days, is then ultimately running that through the committee and off the floor and get those done. Now, they're very big bills, and there's a lot in it. They take a long time to draft, and so there's just a mechanical process that takes several days to go through. So it's good to keep things moving whenever we can. But things are moving very well, and like I said, these are going to be bipartisan agreements all down the line.
Will they go fast because your 100 days are up? I think next Wednesday or
Yeah.
Thursday. So can they do something like that? And
I think we could.
that period of
It's
time?
possible. Yeah, it's going to involve some overtime.
Yeah.
Some people working late, but hopefully not too late into the night.
Right.
And getting things done. We'll get the job done. We'll do whatever it takes to get that job done.
K-12 funding or K-12 education funding is very important to Iowans, and kind of wanted you to give a little bit of a overview on the K-12 funding
Well,
plan.
you're absolutely right. It's a priority for Iowans. It's a priority for House Republicans. And we have set out what is the best we can do with the dollars that we have. Because one of our overarching budget principles is we're not going to spend more than the state collects in revenue. So we take a look at how much new revenue is there, and then how much are we willing to devote to K-12 education. This year, we spent over $153 million out of 170 some million in new revenue on K-12 education. 87% of the new revenue coming into the state went to K-12 education. So I think that represents that a significant new investment in our education.
Yeah.
And that's on the heels of education reform that we've done in the past. And so I think that there's always somebody that wants more, in whether it's K-12 education or any line item in the budget. But this represents significant new dollars to our public school system, and I think that's something that we're happy to get done.
Chris, I know we're talking about a lot of different things, but probably another one that is very important to Iowans and has definitely come on the radar is Iowans' water quality.
Yes.
I think they really have tuned into this a little bit, and so. Can you kind of run through that a little bit? The governor had a proposal on funding water quality, and now I think the Republicans have developed their own plan. And
Right. Well, absolutely, Iowans have said they want considerable new investment and progress made on water quality, and we hear that. And I'm a suburban legislator. My perspective on it is a little different than maybe some of my more rural, ag-centric friends. But the problem is one that I think all Iowans face together. The governor had a very ambitious plan, and his had to do with the school infrastructure sales tax, which that became difficult because there were some in the education community that were uncomfortable with that. And so we set out, what can we do right now? And so the House Republican plan that we've put together actually puts together in the initial years even more money. And we use existing sources, so no tax increases at all. And we take some general fund dollars that we have specifically through the tax on metered water that comes out of your sink, and then also out of our infrastructure fund to put together a pool of money that goes to point and non-point source of pollutants, and trying to put those investments into places where they're going to have the most impact, so that we can actually see meaningful results. And so I think it's a great plan, and I think it really will make a significant impact on water quality. And we're excited to get it moving.
yeah, and I like the fact that the legislature is serious about this and they're taking it up because it's on us right now, our water quality in our state. So another issue that has become not only the state attention has been raised with the human trafficking issue, but nationally it's been discussed too. So what's going on with human trafficking and your discussions down there?
Yeah, for the past 2 or 3 years, this has been a key topic of conversation as more and more Iowans, I think, start to become educated that this is a problem that's here in Iowa. And it's tantamount to slavery of what's happening. And so there's many facets of what can be done. I think first and foremost is identifying the problem. And so we've tried to do educational components for our local law enforcement. We've established an office now for human trafficking to serve as a point for educational efforts or resources to help come alongside victims. We also passed a bill this year that extended the statute of limitations for a victim, so they have a longer period of time to file those charges. And so I think that's also very good.
Hey, Chris, will you tell us a little bit, and our viewers at home, what human trafficking is and why it is such a problem in Iowa?
Well, essentially, you're subjecting a woman to slavery and then selling her off to those, and I think traditionally that would be seen as prostitution, but this is really so much worse. This is someone, like I said, holding someone against their will, and it's something that we can't allow to happen in this state. And it's not just going after the perpetrators of the heinous crime, but also coming alongside and helping to treat and support the victims, which are the women involved. And we want to do that. It's actually pretty interesting to me from a, I don't want to necessarily say a political standpoint, but you've seen a wide range of groups that have come alongside across the political spectrum that see this and working together. People that aren't traditionally allies in the legislature working together to address this problem. And so that's really encouraging, I think, when you see such a wide range of people coming together to work on this. And as heartbreaking as some of these stories are, it's also, I think, encouraging for me to see us be able to come together and actually meet the challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. You brought it to the attention. I mean, you've raised the awareness of it, so I think that's commendable. Data privacy, I think that's an important one. I think we're all kind of petrified a little bit of, that. So kind of explain what the data privacy is. And
we ran a constitutional amendment, without going into too much detail of the process of amending the Iowa Constitution, but to actually extend our protections against search and seizure, to actually extend that to our electronic data and our communications. We all expect that the government can't invade our home or do an illegal seizure, but the law is vague on our electronic data that might be on our phone or our computer, and so we set forth to actually put that into the state constitution, which I think is something that, as we become more and more aware of the insecurity of our data, I think that more and more people expect to have some protection behind that, and so that's what we did. And the resolution didn't advance all the way through, so we'll have to take another run at it next year. But we are absolutely looking at ways to make sure that Iowans feel secure and protected with their data.
So is it similar, or is it connected a little bit to what the federal government, the FBI, tried to do with Apple? Or
yeah, a little bit different, but I think that case certainly raised the issue.
Right.
Can the government come in and compel them to open up your phone for them? And although in that case you're talking about terrorism and national security, I think that individuals still place a great deal of value.
Right. It's still a privacy thing. Just a little bit different.
Right.
Chris, we're coming up on the end of our show, but just in about 20 seconds, kind of give your opinion of the presidential election, which is it's been like no other I've ever seen.
Well, it's fun to watch. I mean, just from a horse race politics standpoint, but I'm somebody that always wants to see the debate elevated. Let's talk issues. Let's get it all out there. And so, to the extent that we can continue to improve upon the process of discussing the important issues of the day, I think that'd be a good thing. And we got a long ways to go in this process, but we will have a vigorous campaign going into the fall, I'm sure. But I'm optimistic, especially for our legislative campaigns. I'm confident we'll hold our majority in the House, and that we'll have a very good year in November.
Excellent. Our guest today has been Representative Chris Hagenow, Republican from Windsor Heights. Chris, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks a lot, Bill.
Stay tuned for another episode of Capitol Preview.